I said on the last video I would name a barrow. Now this rig ditch to the north of Stadborough Copse hasn't been identified before. It's not on the Heritage Environmental Record. I think I'm the first person since probably the Middle Ages to know of it, and I think I'm going to give it its name back. Because the barrow that and the enclosures I showed you to the south of Stadborough Copse last time are close to the village Chedglow, I think that is the low of Chedglow. I think that's already got a name. I think this barrow to the north of Stadborough, I think this barrow to the north of Stadborough Copse is the Stadborough, the Stad Barrow. And I said on the last video, the stad is stead, as in homestead. It could also be stod, as in stud, place for breeding horses, or stod, as in a post in the ground. Most steads maintain their spelling up to the present day, so it's a bit unusual to have STAD. So I'm giving you those two options because I don't have an early form. These two other options are there for you when considering this sort of thing. Now I don't want to scare these birds because there is a man with a gun in this area banging away, and I don't want to drive them towards him. My beauties, hello darling, are you saying hello to me? Yeah. But over the other side of the wood over there, all completely ploughed out, but because it's been so dry, we can see from the satellite photographs, so not just do you get fertile marks, really dark green, you get paler marks, and that's where it's paler you can see stone foundations, because there's not enough earth above them to make it nicely fertile for plants to grow and go green. So we can see we've got two ways of drawing out earthworks that have been pretty much ploughed out, and that is ditches that have been filled with silt and stone foundations that make it infertile above them. And so over here, I don't know whether you can see a tail fin sticking out. That's the Cotswolds Airport, and it made me panic. Made my wife panic the first time she saw that. She thought, "Why is that jumbo jet in that field?" She think there'd been a crash. She said, "Quick, call the police." Anyway, over there is a circle, perfect circle of a ditch, and it is a barrow. Now it could have been almost pretty much flat beforehand, that being a disc barrow, or it could have been a bowl barrow. If it had been a bell barrow, there might have been a lighter ring on the inside, which is the flat bit. So there'd be the barrow, then it'd go flat, and then it'd go down into the ditch, and then out the other side. And so that flat bit can show up because it's probably been tamped down or whatever. But anyway, yeah. So that could be. I can't see our mound over here. I don't have permission to go on the land. I'm on a public footpath now. So it may well not be a barrow, but what makes it interesting is on the other side there is another barrow where I showed you beyond the wood. There's another barrow, and just a ring ditch, and then next to it an enclosure, and that is sort of oval shaped, and other enclosures there, and a a rootway, holloway, maybe something like that. And none of it aligns with our present day hedges. And what we are seeing is something, the catastrophic end. It must have been catastrophic, the end of a culture, because the shapes of the enclosures don't match the angles of the hedges of the fields we know today. To take, if you've got a field with ditches and then somebody comes along and says, that's yours, now do what you like, you're not going to rearrange you might you might build a new hedge down the middle, separate into two parts or more. You may get rid of the hedge in the middle and make it into a bigger, but you're not going to change the alignment of it, because that requires you to dig, to put in labour. It doesn't, people don't do it. They can't, it's ridiculous. Now, the only reason you would do it is for religious purposes. But if you're going to, but if if it was required that an enclosure should be in a field, now there's several enclosures in that field, to save yourself effort, because you've already got a boundary in your square field, you just take a corner. So you put two new hedges, two new ditches instead of four, and take a corner and make that an enclosure. So what you're seeing is the end. Something catastrophic happened to that. I'm not saying war, I can't prove any of that. I'm not saying disease, I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying it ended and something new came along. And we can see, because I've just been on the Roman road, that you've seen me walk down twice now. There are fields beneath it. It cuts through established fields that are the same as today. So you would see these, so seen from the air you wouldn't think anything of it. You would just see these triangular fields. But the Fosseway cuts through rectangular fields, creating triangles. And if you put the two triangles together, they have their integrity. They are, their sides join up. Now they are different colours because two different people own them. And they're doing different things with the fields themselves, but these triangles, when put together, maintain their integrity. If you took the Fosseway away, you would see rectangular fields, and their integrity remains because the sides join up, both sides of the Fosseway. And so what it's telling us is that the Romans came and they cut through Iron Age fields. But which means that the fields that we have today, the boundary, the actual hedges, are Iron Age hedges. Those boundaries were put down in the Iron Age, which makes this landscape so incredibly old. You know, it's 2,000 years old, the way this landscape is laid out. Not all of it. Further on you can see that they use the Fosseway as an existing boundary to make new fields that come out, these squares that abut to the Fosseway, but not here. Now we have our enclosures next to Borough, south of Borough. They're not aligned in the same direction as the hedges on either side, which means almost definitely that they are older than not just the Romans, but the generation of older than the generation of the Iron Age people that were here when the Romans came through, and that is incredibly old. Something catastrophic must have happened for the boundaries to disappear, the layout for there to be no people here, to tell the new landowners, you know, don't bother cutting a new ditch there because there's an old one over here, it'll be easy to cut through. There was nobody here to do that. It is almost definitely because it's laid out differently. They wouldn't have done anything but carry on. If you want to make a profit and you're taking over a company, you don't completely transform it immediately. You say, everybody carry on, and then you do what you want. Then you start to manage the troublemakers out and all that sort of nonsense. But it was a revolution of, and it wasn't a rational. It doesn't appear to be a rational one. It's just the land was empty when these new people came. Now you might be saying to yourself, well, that's all bollocks. You know, when I bought a house, I redesigned the garden immediately. I changed all the direction and everything, put a new patio in, dug up, got rid of his shed, moved all the vegetable beds around, and there's no longer flower beds. Now, yeah, you'd be right, but your garden is what, 1/32th of an acre, and we're talking, you know, hundreds of acres with only three or four families on it. Plus, your boundaries didn't change, did they? Yeah, you know, it stayed pretty much the same. I know one or two people do grab their back lanes, you know, and things like that. But overall, it doesn't change. The alignment of the garden doesn't change. The outside, you know, the direction, the boundary goes. So we're talking scale here, and it's the same with my allotment. You know, I did have everything on contours at one point, and I decided that the paths were taking up more space than the vegetable space, so just get rid of the paths entirely, and that works better, you know, and it's a different alignment. The outside border of the allotment hasn't changed. It's the same as it was before. So it's and the fact that we have continuity from when the Romans take over in the field, in lots of the field boundaries around here, because we can see they are underneath the foss. Because of that, we can say that there is a natural conservatism for land ownership of where those boundaries are, and afterward, and something pretty awful must have happened to upset that, to cause a blip before that. One last thing before I go. People do say to me, that ring ditch, how do you know it was a barrow and not a hut, a round house? Well, the next field over, see, it's been beautifully hot and very dry, so the satellite photographs have been terrific this year. You can see another ring ditch, but with a little gap at the front. And that little gap is now archaeologists might say to themselves, oh, I don't know what that gap would be. But you and I have more common sense. We know that is an entrance. It is. So that thing must be something that you enter. Now, I think it's a roundhouse, but it could be some sort of temenos somewhere, a sacred space. It's much more likely to be a hut. But if you look at the difference between the two, look at them objectively as two pictures, you can see one is different from the other. The roundhouse is not as beautifully formed, is not as perfectly round as my round barrow. This is the field it's in. You wouldn't be able to see it. I could go over there. Well, I couldn't because it's private land, but you could, you know, if you had permission, go over and have a look at it. And it's over here, but you won't see anything from the ground. A drone maybe, but I'm right next to the airport. I might not be very popular if I did that. But anyway, yeah, that's it. That's my walk for today. Hope you've enjoyed it. It's been a short one, or a less organised one than normal, because I've had the car in the garage 3 times in 3 weeks. I don't want to go very far if catastrophe happens. So a little trip to Wiltshire is justified. Going back down to Glastonbury, maybe not. There is unfinished business in Glastonbury. That 1503 is there's grice everywhere. The 1503 perambulation of Glastonbury needs further investigation, which I shall be doing at some point when I'm confident the car can do it.